Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everyone. This is our post-debate show, the second debate, the CNN debate last night. I'm tired, Bill, but duty calls.
So, as a professional pundit, what is the schedule after a 3-hour primetime debate? What? Tell me the glamorous life of a Washington D.C. pundit.
As the guy in Ferris Bueller said as he's parking the car, "Don't worry, man, I'm a professional." Well, it's not. There are people who went to the debate, and there are people who were up at an ungodly hour this morning, especially West Coast time, to do 6 a.m. TV shows, which means you get up 1 o'clock West Coast time. Luckily, that was not me this morning. I tend to just watch them in my house, usually alone, and live tweet them. That's kind of what I do. I had to email Politico last night some immediate thoughts. I was not under the gun to produce content, so that gave me time to digest. Frankly, it was a 3-hour debate, and I think it was hard to come up with a narrative other than the obvious that Carly Fiorina won, because it was almost too much stuff, and I don't even remember some of the things that happened in the first hour. It was information overload.
So yeah, I think there's this broad consensus that Fiorina won, and you were down on Fiorina on the first debate. You thought she did not win the kids table debate, and you were, but she got a little bounce after that. But now you're on board. You feel you're with conventional wisdom today.
Well, not only that, I predicted, as I can demonstrate by video, I predicted on TV. I predicted on TV that she would do precisely what she did. No, the reason I was down on her during the first debate was I felt like she did not seem friendly enough or nice enough. She did not smile. But she did. She has always had a really good command of information and seemed utterly competent and very quick-witted. I felt like she wasn't friendly enough, didn't smile enough, that might hurt her. But the public, I guess, doesn't care. I think that they're looking for a fighter. And
she wasn't very smiley last night, but she was very poised and confident and crisp. Even whether it was like a sort of a set piece, there's clearly some things I think she sort of had at the ready, but she also had good stuff on the fly when she was responding to Trump. So in that sense, it felt like sort of a complete package, not just like a single moment. She had a few solid moments that helped her stand out.
Yeah, I think she also got a lot of time, which really helped. I mean, every time she had several moments, right, where she had big moments. There was the case where she really took Donald Trump to the woodshed for his comments about her face. There were the passionate talk about Planned Parenthood and abortion. And I think there was also the kind of heartstrings moment about her child who died with drugs. And so she had multiple moments. I think that she probably had more time allotted to her than maybe she might have normally gotten because of where she's at in terms of polling. I mean, there were other people like Mike Huckabee and Marco Rubio who did, and I would say Ted Cruz, they did really well when they got their moment, but they 25 minutes would go by without Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz, getting a chance to talk. Carly didn't suffer that fate. Maybe it's partly because this was her first debate. Maybe it's because she was the only woman, or maybe she just did a better job of inserting herself into the discussion. But I think she clearly won.
Now, I agree with that. But if I'm a Republican, like this would concern me. I mean, this makes me happy as a Democrat.
Be careful what you wish for, Bill. Be careful what you wish for.
This also makes me happy as someone who is all in on Jeb being the nominee. This is following my prediction of what's going to happen. It's similar to 2012, a revolving door of implausible conservative boomlets everyone gets their 15 minutes. No one can consolidate an anti-Jeb, anti-establishment majority, and Jeb can be a middling candidate with a big war chest and wait out all of these little boomlets and survive at the end of the day, much like Mitt Romney survived the Gingrich and Santorum boomlets. And before then, of course, Michelle Bachmann, Herman Cain. So is Donald Trump the Herman Cain? That's going to fade now, and Fiorina is going to be the Michelle Bachmann, and she'll fade. So that all fits with my expectation. But if I'm a Republican, I got to say, there's no way that a failed CEO who couldn't even beat Barbara Boxer in 2010, a Tea Party year, how is she going to be the nominee, let alone be a plausible general election candidate? And if she can't be a plausible general election candidate, how is it that my plausible candidates can't beat her in a debate? I mean, isn't that sad?
I don't think so at all, Bill. I think, first of all, it's probably harder to win California than it is to win the presidency as a Republican. Whoever becomes, if a Republican becomes president, they probably won't win California in doing it. So, it is weird if you look on paper. Carly's resume might suggest that we're surprised that she's doing so well. But she is doing great. She has impressed this entire campaign. She is a fabulous debater, has command of the facts, is tough, is quick-witted. One can imagine her doing very well against Hillary, undercutting the history argument. And so I think she's for real, and I think the rules have kind of changed, too. I think that Donald Trump's presence, and we'll talk more about him in a minute, but I think Donald Trump's presence in the debate makes other people look more plausible. So, Ted Cruz and Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson look moderate in comparison, and they seem like a compromise candidate, whereas in the past, the establishment might have turned up their nose at someone who'd never been elected before. I think that Trump has sort of normalized that, created kind of a permission structure to go with someone. I think the rules might be changing, and I think it's utterly plausible or possible that Carly could be the nominee or certainly the running mate. And the last thing I'll say is that let's not forget that Marco Rubio, I think everyone kind of agrees, had a good night and probably finished second place. It's only the second debate. If Rubio finished second this time, clearly he's somebody who I think is qualified to be the nominee and to be president. So I'm not the least bit worried about this. I think last night was actually a step forward if you're a conservative, if you're a Republican, with Carly and Rubio and not Donald Trump getting the headlines.
Look, I think Rubio should have – it should be considered that Rubio had a great night. If you're trying to elevate candidates that would have a chance in a general election, like you'd want to get a whole. I mean, Rubio was very sharp. Even though he got less time, he made the most of the time that he had, and had more substantive things to say than Fiorina did. But I think what should be concerning here is the criteria people have to judge candidates is at the primary stage is out of whack with what you actually need to have, not only to be president, which is maybe a step too far in our media culture, but to be a successful general election candidate. It's one thing to have 3 good moments in a primary debate with 10 other people, where you only get so many bites of the apple. If you're going to do a 90-minute debate one-on-one with a Hillary Clinton, you got to go a lot. Even in granted, those debates you still only 2.5 minute answers. You still got to go deeper than you did here, and the fact checking that happens afterwards is much more fierce. I mean,
sure,
Fiorina's already getting hit that she said Hillary and Barack should watch the Planned Parenthood videos, and then she describes something that was not in the videos. Like that kind of thing would be way more damaging in a general election debate setting.
I would say this, though, Bill. Let me just stress, this is only the second debate. I forget how many Republicans are going to have, but what are we looking at, 8 or 10 or something probably, which is like
right.
There were like 20 or something last time, but still. So number one, I think if you're Rubio, maybe you don't want to peak too early. That's what Scott Walker did. Maybe it's good that Rubio finished probably second this time and just continues to improve. And in terms of Carly and Rubio, I would say by the time they get around to debating Hillary, whoever the nominee is will have been in 10 of these debates, will have presumably gotten better, gotten more experienced, just like Barack Obama did in 2008 after his many debates against Hillary. So meanwhile, Hillary's not going to have that many opportunities. So I think that, we've wrung our hands and clutched our pearls about the clown car, but it could end up being that this ends up being very helpful for the Republican to go through this process if we end up with someone like Carly or Rubio, who I believe in both cases, Carly Fiorina or Marco Rubio would be not only good primary candidates, but good general election candidates. I think that both of them are cosmopolitan conservatives in the sense that I don't think that by virtue of their sort of cultural identity or demeanor that they would turn off, urbanites or millennials. In fact, I think that they could both cut into the liberal so-called base in that regard.
And one thing I also thought was strange, it's a 3-hour debate. You had lots of time.
Oh, my God. It was way too long, let me just say. It should have been.
I could have watched that all night long. That should have been 24 hours. The fun never stopped for me. And look, it's 11 people, and there's a lot of ground to cover. So, I mean, you had the opportunity to actually, go a little bit deeper on issues that you might not have had if it was a shorter debate. I probably didn't need to have a question about Secret Service code names, but that aside, I thought, democracy needs a little work. Put in the time. Give people a chance to speak. But if you're going to have a party that believes being a CEO is a good qualification to be commander-in-chief, this is a free market party. It praises the success in the private sector. And we think government should be run as a business, so therefore let's attract business people. I would expect to hear those people have some very interesting ideas how you create jobs as a government official. Yet you're not so. I mean, this goes beyond just Trump and Fiorina.
I don't think government officials create jobs, and that's the fundamental conflict of visions.
You're still running to be in that job. You're going to do something. Even if you're something that's going to tear apart the entire legal code, you're going to do something, and you want to be able to articulate how your experience as a private sector executive informs your view about that. But when Trump and Fiorina had the opportunity, Jake Tapper asked Fiorina first, tell me why you would be better at creating jobs than Donald Trump. She didn't go to her 5-point jobs plan because she doesn't have one. She went into the defensive mode of, I didn't completely suck at Hewlett Packard even though I got fired. And then Trump then said, oh, you did suck at Hewlett Packard. And then Fiorina says, well, you had to file for bankruptcy 4 times. So they're both just tearing down each other's, quite frankly, middling record as I
thought Carly had a really strong response there. And I thought that she needed, it was a predictable attack. I think that, it's important in terms of filling out her biography and her credibility to debunk the claims that she was a bad CEO, as that's a big part of her resume. So I think she had to knock down those attacks, and I think she did a good job. I will say this. I think Donald Trump did not seem to be having as much fun. He had a sort of a joie de vivre in the earlier debate where he looked like he was just loving it, really enjoying it. Last night did not seem from the start, and it wasn't just the 3-hour thing, did not seem that happy to be there, seemed tired, did not seem to relish the fight as much as he normally does. So I think that was an important turning point. Also, there were some, substantive exchanges where Trump was out of the picture for a long time. He just didn't jump in, didn't have anything to add. So I think that along with Carly having a really good night and Rubio having a good night. It's also the fact that Trump didn't perform as well. I think that I think part of it was that the crowd at the Reagan Library, they had apparently, according to what I read in the New York Times, been urged not to cheer, not to applaud. I thought that might hurt Trump, but it turns out, and maybe it helped him, because I don't think the crowd was with him. I think they were a little bit more of an establishment crowd, sort of it's not Ohio, it's Simi Valley. So
it was actually a smaller room and more invite only. So you're literally correct. It was like Republican donors in that crowd, whereas the Fox News audience was like a 5,000 person crowd. You had a lot more, regular Republican rank and file in there. But I think Trump's performance I thought was pretty similar to the first debate. He's not good in debates. He's a one trick pony. He needs to have everything be just so, where it's him behind the podium and nobody challenging him, or it's him talking on the phone on a TV show where he can't be interrupted very easily. Everyone's good because you can't see his face, so you got to let him go on and on and on. He's not good when he is on par with 10 other people on a stage and has to wait his turn. That's not his deal. And that's why, that's one of the many reasons why I've maintained that, the rules have not changed. Flash in the pan candidates will still be flashes in the pan, and he will be exposed over time as not a well-rounded enough commodity to survive the gauntlet of primaries. I think, having said that, of course, he had a pretty poor first debate. It didn't matter poll-wise because he found a way to win the post-debate. He just dived in on going after Megyn Kelly and railing about political correctness and kept himself the story. This is the thing. When he's the story, the Republican primary is effectively, are you with Trump or are you not with Trump? And so Trump can get 30% and lose 70%, but that 70% split amongst 10 other candidates, and it looks like he's winning. But in this case, you had a definitive winner of the debate, Carly Fiorina. She's going to get a lot of news coverage the next several days. Is Trump going to be able to step on that and put the spotlight back on him? I'm more skeptical of that. Actually, unlike the first debate, there is somewhere else for that spotlight to go, and the Trump story is getting kind of tired. I think the conservative base, who seems to get attracted to these flashes in the pan type candidates, it's about time for the next flash in the pan to come along. And Fiorina's got plenty of upside to tap for now, and I should probably get another month or two out of it.
Yeah, well, I think a couple things were different for Trump last night. One, I think Carly Fiorina she wasn't in the first debate, not in the primetime debate. She's very tough. She had the moral high ground. I think she took it to Trump. That was a difference. I think all the other opponents also were better at taking it to Trump. They must have learned something from the first debate. They were more adept at attacking Trump or counterpunching, including Jeb Bush. Not to say that he was good at it, but he was better at it. And then lastly, I think you are onto something, Bill. I do think that Trump has a shtick, and I think that familiarity breeds contempt. I think that over time it's going to become less fun, less funny, less charming, and the audience is fickle. They want something new. I mean, Trump. How long can Trump be the exciting story? Maybe it's going to be Carson or Carly next, right? And I don't think this is going to be the same as what happened in 2012, where you had like Herman Cain and Bachmann and all these people each taking turns, Perry, each taking turns being in first place. I mean, I think Trump was more formidable than any of them turned out to be. But having said that, I do think that it is a shtick, and we might have begun to see people finally growing tired of it.
Trump's go-to, whenever anything's thrown at him, is always to point to the polls. I'm number one in all the polls. So-and-so, Rand Paul shouldn't even be here. He's only 1%. This is classic hype. This is a stock bubble in action, which is not based on the substance of the candidates. It's just on looking at the poll numbers.
Yeah.
So what happens on the day where polls number drops 5 points.
Well, we have begun to see, by the way.
And he's in second place and not first place. What does he say then? At that precise moment, it all collapses. The bubble is burst.
I have seen, starting yesterday, Bill, I saw I think it was one out of Michigan, for example, was starting to see Ben Carson in first place, just edging him out. So, I mean, I don't know if those were outliers or if it's a trend, but it's entirely plausible that we will see that happen sooner rather than later, where Trump and then, live by the sword, die by the sword. I mean, if everything's built on being Mr. Popular, then what do you do when it's gone? So I think we're going to have a quick show today, try to get this up in time to be relevant, as everyone's doing their post-debate analysis. But I do want to ask you, Bill, or I do want to talk about the moderators. I felt like the Fox debate was more fun. It seemed like Jake Tapper, rather than having a bell, found himself having to sort of interrupt people and play referee more. And there's a lot of conservatives disappointed that Hugh Hewitt didn't get more opportunity to talk. Dana Bash hardly spoke at all. What was your take on how the moderators handled, hurting this cast last night?
Well, I mean, I thought I liked both debates, and I thought the Fox debate, to the chagrin of liberal Fox haters, the one thing that Fox does well is TV. They know how to put on a good show.
Well, that's the big thing they do. So good.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and they were, and they actually made the moderators kind of part of the story. Yeah. The moderators, they weren't just lobbing off softballs. They were being very provocative.
And Hugh Hewitt missed. He had an opportunity, by the way, where he could have become part of the story last night. I think he chose not to insert himself in there. Sort of going along with the philosophy that if you're talking about the referee, then the referee's doing something wrong. But I wonder if that wasn't a missed opportunity, that he could have become part of the story a little bit. Maybe that would have been good for him to tangle with Donald Trump. I don't know if you remember that moment.
Well, I do remember that moment, but I don't want to get to Hugh in a second. But I thought that even though Jake Tapper was not as charismatic a performer as a Megyn Kelly or Chris Wallace, he's maybe a bit more like the Brett Baer of the group. We read before that CNN wanted to have the candidates engage each other more than on Fox, and Fox was sort of moderator versus candidate. They want more candidate versus candidate, and they got that. I mean, they laid the bait for Trump and Fiorina like right off the top, and they took it. And those there was lots of Jeb versus Trump. There was Christie dumping on various skirmishes. All the stuff that CNN wanted, they got, and there are moments of that debate that people are talking about right now. So it's talking strictly about good TV, not good for democracy and substance and all that stuff. I thought CNN achieved what they wanted to accomplish, and it wasn't sleepy, it wasn't dull. Was it substantive? Barely, but that's I think the fault of the candidates not having a lot of substantive plans, not the fault of the moderators so much. Now, as far as Hugh is concerned, I think it's a little weird that he's there. He gave a whole spiel about how he opposed Hillary Clinton. That's sort of a weird thing for a moderator to do, to take a firm position on a candidate, even if you're an opinion journalist. I think that crosses a bit of a line. He felt like being more of a cheerleader for the party at that moment. But he's a radio guy. He's not a TV performer, and he has his own policy agenda that he seemed to want to talk about, get in his own little stump, and he didn't want to get into an argument. He didn't want to be the story, quote unquote, vis-a-vis Trump, because he's not trying to have that kind of friction with the party's choices. But did he successfully draw? He wants to make national security a main thing and get them to talk in more detail about that. And Carly Fiorina's whole Russia bit seemed to just be cribbing off of Hugh Hewitt's talking points to try to butter him up. But I don't think he did a good job fleshing out policy details.
Well, I don't think he had enough time. I mean, Hugh is great He's terrific on the radio. He's a lawyer. He can really cross-examine people. I don't think he was afforded enough time and the opportunity to really have that moment that I think he's certainly capable of having.
Well, you got. I mean, just like the participants, you got to take the time. You got to seize the moment. I mean, his whole thing is that he's being the sage of the party, who's forcing the party to step up their game on national security. So he needed to have questions at the ready that were going to push the candidates, and I think that's sort of the big thing. Because I think he's a little more comfortable pushing them on his own show, and I feel like on the big stage where it was not just Hugh Hewitt fans, I think he was reluctant to push them and to call them out if they were not being subs of national security. I think he flinched.
Well, we'll have to leave it there, I think, Bill. I think the suits that pay us, the big bucks to do this show probably would like to get this up while people are still doing the post-debate analysis. But let's plug some stuff, for crying out loud. What should people do, Bill?
Well, the first thing you should do after seeing a second-rate CEO win a presidential debate, you should buy Matt Lewis's book, Too Dumb to Fail.
Oh, no. No, I'll tell you why they should buy, and by the way, I'll tell you why they should pre-order Too Dumb to Fail. It's because it is utterly relevant with not Carly, but I think Donald Trump. But not only that, last night Ann Coulter tweets, I'm quoting here, this is Ann Coulter, how many effing Jews do these people think there are in the United States? She was unhappy with...
what is the context of that?
I think that she was upset with the quote-unquote pandering that about Israel that was taking place at one point. But this speaks to her sort of brand of right populist, white identity politics that we're seeing with Donald Trump and Ann Coulter.
I'm looking at the Coulter Twitter stream here. She's so sure. It's good grief. Huckabee is running for PM of Israel. Rubio running to be curator of the Reagan Museum. Cruz, Huckabee, Rubio all mention Israel in their response to what will America look like after you are president. Then she says, how many effing Jews people think there are in the United States? Maybe it's to suck up to the evangelicals. I mean, that's bizarre on so many levels.
It's weird, but that's kind of who she is now, and I think that's kind of where sadly, a strain of conservatism is. And if you do not like that strain, go pre-order Too Dumb to Fail, because I push back at that among other troubling trends.
But isn't there a massive strain of evangelicals that are supportive of Israel? Why would Coulter want to attack that?
Because number one, I think she wants to sell books and be provocative and get attention. And I think that
aren't those the people that buy her books? That's what they say.
Well, I think that at some point you get so desperate for attention that you've gone to the well so many times that you still have to pull out all the stops, and so this may be kind of like her last rodeo or something. Maybe she feels that way.
Does she campaign with David Duke next, or does she decide I'm gonna co-write a book with Al Sharpton because that's just something new and different and fresh that I haven't done before?
Well, I also think I'm
not equating Sharpton with David Duke, people. Please don't say that. I'm just making a point.
I mean, I also think that this is maybe what she really believes, and this is consistent with the Donald Trump philosophy and the sort of angry, aggrieved victimhood, white identity politics, populism. It runs counter to the kind of Reagan-Kemp philosophy that I adhere to, which says you can grow the pie. I mean, that's the whole point of supply-side economics, and why it made Reagan optimistic is that you believe that you can grow the pie and that, conservative ideas will benefit everybody. She's advocating a more reactionary populist brand of conservatism, which believes that we have a very small pie and we have to fight over our slice, and presumably, working class whites need to be protected from the barbarians at the gate who are trying to take their slice of pie. I mean, it's a conflict of visions. I think it's pernicious. That's part of the reason I'm writing this book. But I've seen this trend coming. It's just interesting to see her be so transparent about what she how she really feels, as opposed to cloaking it in dog whistles.
Well, if the Republican Party is to have any hope of surviving in a 21st century America, definitely go read Matt Lewis's Too Dumb to Fail and stop buying Ann Coulter books.
Well, the problem is that you could make an argument that in the short term, doubling down on the working class white rural vote makes sense in the short term. I just think in the long run, not only does it go against my gut instinct about being a good person and what my political philosophy, but I think in the long run, it's demographic suicide as well. So electoral suicide.
So get a pre-order on Amazon. Any exciting guests on your podcast this week?
Yeah, check out I had Joe Trippi last week. That's kind of the last one I've uploaded. I'm slacking off, but check that out. Get the podcast. You can get that at iTunes and Bill, you're embarrassing me though. You gotta what's coming up on Real Clear Politics or Politico?
Well, I had a piece on Monday, the case against Joe Biden 16. In which I said if Joe actually made the jump in, he would immediately be accused of putting a glass ceiling on Hillary, which Bernie Sanders is not getting that accusation because he has a substantive reason to oppose Hillary. He has actual policy disagreements, so you can't put that tag on him. Biden and Hillary come from the same mainstream wing of the party. They might have some minor differences, but nothing fundamental the way Bernie and Hillary do. And so if you're Joe, you got to ask yourself, how do I want to go out here? As it stands, I got a strong senatorial legacy. I got a strong vice presidential legacy, equal rights being part of that legacy, defeating Robert Bork, getting Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court, having him rule in the favor of gay marriage, Violence Against Women Act signature law that he wrote and passed in the 90s. Why jeopardize that with being accused of denying an historic opportunity to a woman on no substantive grounds? I think that is a very dicey move for him, whereas if he endorsed Hillary after all of this drama, he would be revered amongst Democrats as the uniter of the party, giving Hillary the shot in the arm she needed to get through this miserable summer. So that's in Real Clear Politics. You want to check that out. Then I have my own post-debate analysis focusing on what do the Republicans say on jobs up at ourfuture.org. The spoiler is not very much. So those are two things I have worth chewing on this week.
All right, good stuff. Everyone check us out on Twitter at DMZ Show. Bill Scher, always good talking with you.
You as well. Until next week.
All right, keep it classy, Blogging Heads fans. We'll see you next week after I get some sleep. God bless you. Good night.
Take care.